FTAs and Ceca have been made political scapegoats to discredit the policy of the PAP government.
In a ministerial statement, Ong Ye Kung says that falsehoods about Singapore's trade deals need to be corrected. Swimming, cycling and racket games, a few examples of physical activities you should avoid after getting your COVID-19 jabs. And the woman who was caught on video refusing to wear a mask at MBS was handed more charges today. Hello, I'm Olivia Quay. You're watching The Big Story live in the Straits Times newsroom. You can subscribe to our channel so you never miss a single episode. Singapore's free trade agreements, particularly the Singapore-India Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, or SECA, were the main issues debated in Parliament today. So in response and seeking to explain why FTAs are critical to Singapore, Health Minister Ong Ye Kung and Manpower Minister Tan See Leng delivered ministerial statements earlier this afternoon. But with some of the 18 questions filed raising concerns about foreign manpower and the impact on local workers, Dr. Tan called the focus on FTAs and Ceca a red herring.
Now, the PSP has made Indian nationals coming in through Ceca a focus of contention. But I'm afraid they've been barking up the wrong tree. The number of ICTs coming in under our FTAs, and in particular Ceca, is a very, very small number relative to the total number of EPs. So I suggest we set aside this red herring and move on, more importantly, to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is this: how do we, as a small country, devoid of any natural resources, remain open to global talent, for us to continue to create opportunities for our fellow country Singaporeans, while at the same time managing the attendant social repercussions? Singaporeans are pragmatic. They understand we need to remain open to global talent. However, they also face real challenges. In particular, they're worried about three things. First, that the growth in EP holders has come at the expense of our local PMEs. Second, that some workplaces have become more concentrated with a single nationality. Third, that there may be discrimination against local job seekers and employees. I've come from the private sector, and I understand and I empathize with these fears, these concerns, and these anxieties.
And so Dr. Tan said the fundamental question is how to strike a balance between ensuring businesses have access to skills and manpower while creating opportunities for local workers. The government has a two-pronged strategy to achieve this.
So the first is to ensure that our local workers can compete fairly. We do this through our work pass controls. Our prevalent view is that foreign manpower should not come to Singapore just because they are cheaper to hire than locals. They should complement but not displace our local workforce. They should bring in extra skills to help the companies and at the same time create more Singaporean jobs. In line with these objectives, at the work permit and the S-Pass level, we have quotas and we have levies in place to regulate foreign worker numbers. We have been progressively tightening quotas. We have been progressively raising levies to reduce manpower reliance, spur job redesign, push for quality growth. For EPs, we do not impose quotas or levies because there is fierce competition for global talent and worldwide shortages in areas such as tech and digital skills. A quota would be a hard cap that would limit our ability to compete at the high end of the global economy, while for a levy to have any impact or any effect at all on EP numbers, it would have to be set very high and would substantially increase business costs. Instead, what we have done is that we have focused on setting and raising the quality bar for EP holders through requirements on salary and qualifications to make sure that the EPs who come in are at the right level and they bring the right skill sets, the necessary expertise and experience to contribute significantly to our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, there are limits as to how far we can tighten our controls without eventually hurting Singaporeans. With remote working becoming more prevalent, companies increasingly do not need to site their manpower in Singapore. In fact, we may find more businesses simply choosing to move entire business functions offshore if it becomes too difficult, onerous, or expensive to operate here. Singaporeans will end up with the shorter end of the stick as well by losing some jobs too. And this is precisely why the second prong of our approach, that of ensuring that our Singaporeans can compete strongly, is just as important. In an open and globalized labor market like ours, competition is intense and stiff. There will be some of our fellow Singaporeans who are displaced from their jobs, and we need to help them find replacement jobs. This happens not just because of competition from foreign workers, but because of other factors like technological change and industries phasing out. And this is why the government invests so heavily in retraining, in skills development, so that displaced workers can gain new skills and reinvent themselves, either by doing a different job in the same industry or transiting to another industry altogether.
Responding to the Progress Singapore Party's questions on the nationality profile of work pass holders and their dependents, Dr. Tan said the top nationalities that could comprise around two-thirds of employment pass holders here has been consistent since 2005. Namely, they are from China, India, Japan, Malaysia, the Philippines and the UK. And while the proportion of EP holders from India has doubled to 26% last year from 13% back in 2005, Dr. Tan said it was driven by Singapore's rapidly growing digital economy rather than the result of more favorable treatment due to Ceca.
I believe the interest is really in Indian EP holders. The proportion of EP holders from India has increased from about 1/7 in 2005 to about a quarter in 2020. In comparison, the proportion of EP holders from China has remained relatively stable across this same time period. Now, is this the result of more favorable treatment for Indian EP holders due to Ceca? The answer is no. As I've shared earlier, all work pass holders in Singapore have to meet the same criteria before they are allowed to enter our labour market. There is no differentiation based on nationality. Rather, these numbers reflect trends in the global demand and supply of tech talent. The larger increase in Indian EP holders compared to other nationalities is driven by a result of rapid growth and choices of growing our digital economy and finance. As every sector seeks to be digitally enabled, their need for tech talent has grown significantly. We don't have enough locals to fill the jobs available. India is the largest country of origin for international migrants. This is in the 2021 January UN DESA report. In 2020 alone, it accounted for 18 million international migrants, up by 10 million from 2000. India has grown to become the second largest source of immigrants in the US, the third largest in the UK, and these two countries are also heavily invested in developing the technological capabilities. Now, our companies, our industries, our enterprises, they are both creators, as well as they are creators of technology, but they are also adopters of the talent that is needed to create these technologies. Given our relative shortage of manpower, even if the workers don't come from India, they will come from somewhere else. Now, I hope that Mr. Leong is not objecting to Indians per se. The point I think we should ask ourselves is this: are they helping our companies? Are they helping our enterprises? Are they helping us to grow our economy and create better Singaporean jobs? The answer is yes.
Also addressing discrimination in the workplace, Dr. Tan said there's a zero-tolerance policy towards discriminatory hiring practices, with all employers expected to comply with the Fair Consideration Framework requirements.
Over the past 3 years, TAFEP has handled an average of 170 nationality discrimination cases arising from complaints annually. The top 3 sectors making up about half of the complaints are the wholesale and retail trade, administrative and support services, and other service activities. These cases are investigated by TAFEP, and where warranted, they are referred to MOM for enforcement. Going forward, we will do more to clamp down on egregious employers with discriminatory employment practices. Several MPs like Mr. Louis Ng, Mr. Patrick Tay, and Mr. Vikram Nair had earlier suggested strengthening our levers to give more bite to our tripartite guidelines on fair employment practices. We take these suggestions seriously, and we have been studying various options.
As the former Deputy Chief Negotiator for the US-Singapore FTA, Mr. Ong Ye Kung said he felt duty-bound to correct the falsehoods surrounding Ceca and FTAs, pointing to an online post last month where PSP non-constituency MP Leong Man Wai claimed foreign PMETs and FTAs have affected the jobs and livelihoods of Singaporeans.
In his social media post on 22nd June this year, Mr. Leong Man Wai again said, and I quote, "The most important economic policies that have affected the jobs and livelihoods of Singaporeans relate to foreign PMEs and free trade agreements, in particular Ceca." Unquote. Mr. Speaker, these statements are false. They have been repeated for too long. I am a former trade negotiator at MTI when I was a civil servant. We worked closely on several FTAs. I worked with a very dedicated team who has over 2 decades fought hard for the interests of Singapore, to expand our economic and political space for our small island state. And I feel I owe a duty to correct the falsehoods. Indeed, Singaporean PMEs, like PMEs in other advanced economies, are facing challenges. Many have given us their feedback, and the government has been taking steps to address their concerns. But our FTAs in general, and Ceca in particular, are not the causes of the challenges our PMEs face. If anything, they are part of the solution. FTAs and Ceca have been made political scapegoats to discredit the policy of the PAP government.
Mr. Ong went on to say that it is in Singapore's interest to pursue FTAs. Singapore has built a network of 26 FTAs with key economic partners, including the US, the EU, ASEAN, China and India.
Our total trade is 3 times our GDP. Since 2005, our total trade has nearly doubled from around 890 billion Sing dollars to now 1.5 trillion Sing dollars. And today, when EDB goes out and persuades investors to come to Singapore, our network of FTAs is always a major selling point. FTAs are especially important to our SMEs. They free them from being constrained by our small domestic market and give them access to global markets. So our SMEs are sending all kinds of Singapore-made products overseas, from canned food, barbecued pork, frozen roti prata. I heard some are exported to India, to medical devices, machines, components, chemicals. FTAs are also spurring our companies to venture abroad. Our investments overseas increased nearly 5 times, from 200 billion Sing dollars 2005 to over 930 billion Sing dollars 2019. So when our companies grow overseas, they become stronger, and they also employ more Singaporeans here. If we accept this basic reality, that Singapore needs the world to earn a living, then we would realize the fundamental importance of all our FTAs. They are a keystone of the economic superstructure that we have built. We could not have advanced the welfare of Singaporeans to the degree that we have without FTAs. We cannot take all this for granted.
Mr. Ong also listed key disciplines of an FTA. For Ceca specifically, he said it reduces tariff barriers, which made Singapore goods more competitive in the Indian market. And partly because of that, bilateral trade between both countries grew by over 80% between 2005 and 2019. Mr. Ong, though, noted that despite significant benefits, FTAs are controversial in many countries.
As a trade negotiator, I've listened to the problems and sensitivities of many of our FTA partners. What are these sensitivities? Some countries wish to protect certain sectors, such as agriculture. There's a very common one, which Singapore does not do. We have some eggs, we have some fish, but more for a bit of source diversification. We never seek to conquer the world with our eggs and our sea buses. Others could not live up to, say, the transparency standards of, say, government procurement or intellectual property disciplines. Still others are concerned about the influences of foreign culture through industries such as arts and entertainment. Canada, for example, very sensitive about this area. So the toughest job and the most time-consuming job of a negotiator is to identify and understand the sensitivities of your country, and then find ways to protect or to address them. How do we do so? We find words that give you comfort, that address the sensitivity. And we call these words, in our jargon, exceptions or carve-outs. When we have a big carve-out, with strong protection in our sensitive areas, we will say this carve-out is strong and big enough for a jumbo jet to fly through. In some sensitive areas, it is easy to negotiate exceptions or carve-outs because everyone agrees. One example is right of taxation by governments. Another one is national security. A third one is immigration. Every country holds the view that there cannot be unfettered movement of people across borders. Every FTA partner believes that. That would create social unrest and a big public uproar. Governments must retain the ability to impose immigration and border controls, and FTAs cannot undermine that. Hence, in all FTAs and also WTO agreements, you will find that immigration powers are strongly and prominently preserved and protected. You can find such standard clauses in the WTO agreement as well as in all our FTAs, including Ceca.
Mr. Ong there stressing that Singapore's ability to regulate immigration and foreign manpower is not affected by Ceca. Well, here are 5 myths and facts about the Free Trade Pact according to the Trade and Industry Ministry. First myth, that Ceca gives Indian workers free entry into Singapore. Well, as both Ministers Ong and Tan have said, Ceca does not give Indian nationals unfettered access to Singapore's labour market. All foreign nationals must meet prevailing work pass conditions in order to work here. The second myth, Ceca gives Indian nationals privileges for citizenship or permanent residency. Chapter 9 of the Agreement on Movement of Individuals makes it clear that the government's ability to regulate immigration and foreign manpower is not affected by Ceca. And next, Ceca obliges Singapore to allow the entry of Indian dependents and for them to work in Singapore. Well, just as before, all work pass holders need to meet the Manpower Ministry's prevailing criteria to bring in dependents. The vast majority of dependents here only accompany the work pass holder and do not work. Those who wish to have to apply for a relevant work pass. Moving on, there's a separate category of professional visas under Ceca. There is no such separate category. They are subjected to the same prevailing work pass criteria that MOM applies to all other foreigners. And lastly, the nationality profile of Singapore's foreign workforce has been influenced by Ceca. Well, the nationality composition of Singapore's workforce is an outcome of the sectors it has chosen to focus on, as well as global demand and supply of workers with the relevant skill sets. For instance, as there aren't enough Singaporeans to fill these jobs, Indian tech talents have come to complement local tech talent. You can watch the full ministerial statements on FTAs and Ceca on ST's YouTube channel. An update on the COVID-19 situation in Singapore. 2 locally transmitted cases were confirmed today. Both are unlinked. The remaining 8 cases were imported, with 7 detected upon arrival and the other developed COVID-19 during SHN or isolation. More details will be released later tonight. According to the Health Ministry, swimming, cycling, lifting heavy weights as well as ball and racket games are some of the activities you should avoid for 7 days after receiving your first and second jabs. Appearing in a ministry advisory yesterday, the clarification follows an amended recommendation the same day that people should avoid strenuous physical activity after receiving either of their mRNA COVID-19 vaccination doses. MOH has said this review took place independently of an incident involving a 16-year-old male. He had suffered a cardiac arrest shortly after a strenuous weightlifting session at a gym that took place 6 days after he received his first dose of an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. Well, joining me now is Dr. Daniel Yeo, a senior consultant, cardiologist and medical director of Apex Heart Clinic in Gleneagles Hospital. Welcome to the show, doctor. So, authorities are still investigating the case of this 16-year-old, whether there is a link between heart issues caused by the COVID-19 vaccine. But as at June the 30th, there were 12 reports of myocarditis and pericarditis occurring in people following their vaccinations with mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. So, Doc, while these incidents are rare, could you briefly explain how these could have happened?
Hi, Olivia. This myocarditis and pericarditis is basically inflammation of the heart muscle and the lining of the heart. And it often occurs together. Sometimes it can just occur singly, so either the heart muscle or just the lining of the heart, but you can have both together. So it's a spectrum. The 2 major ways that this occurs is firstly by direct injury from, let's say, a viral infection or a what we call immune-mediated response. Now with the vaccine, clearly there's no actual virus. What we are seeing is the body mounting an immune response, and along the way, there is some collateral damage where the heart muscle and the lining of the heart is also targeted. So the inflammation causes varying degrees of damage. And if significant enough, persons affected can get symptoms.
I see. So, Dr. Yeo, say I'm someone who's recently been given the COVID-19 shot. What are the signs to watch out for that could point to a cardiac event?
I would say the most important signs would be breathlessness, palpitations, and chest pain. So why breathlessness? Myocarditis or inflammation of the heart muscle will affect the heart's ability to pump blood around the body, thereby causing what we call heart failure. So one of the cardinal symptoms of heart failure is breathlessness. So if someone suddenly feels out of breath for no good reason, or if they normally could do exercise, if they could do a 5-kilometer jog, but now they get out of breath after a kilometer. That's not normal. So that's a very important sign. Chest pain for any reason has to be taken seriously. It could be a sign of myocarditis. It could be a sign of some other complication of the vaccination as well. And it may be a sign of high blood pressure, for example, or one of the other possible complications could be increased chance of ischemic heart disease or heart attack. Although very rare, that's an important sign not to miss because it could be potentially life-threatening. So palpitations means that one can experience a very fast heartbeat or irregular heartbeat, and that can happen when the heart is inflamed, and so the proper function of the heart is affected, not just the pump function, but the regularity of the pump.
Well, thank you very much for your insights, Dr. Yeo. I've been speaking with cardiologist Dr. Daniel Yeo, who's the medical director of Apex Heart Clinic. And of course, see a doctor if you experience any symptoms that Dr. Yeo spoke about. Well, moving on, according to Chief Executive Carrie Lam, Hong Kong will assess Singapore's new COVID-19 strategy as both countries try to revive their quarantine-free travel corridor. Mrs. Lam also said the situation is very stable on both sides. While Singapore plans to have 2/3 of our population fully vaccinated by National Day, Hong Kong's vaccination rate has been slower, with only about 22% of the population fully inoculated. Elsewhere, London's Heathrow Airport has reopened its second runway yesterday and plans to resume normal operations at Terminal 3 starting July 15th. This alongside a relaxation of England's lockdown rules, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson confirming plans to scrap social distancing and face mask requirements from July the 19th. Well, back home in non-COVID-19 news, Phase 2A1 of the Primary 1 registration exercise reserved for children whose parents are alumni or members of the school's advisory board will open at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The Education Ministry will release the results by SMS next Tuesday, July 13th. The school placement exercise for returning Singaporeans will also open tomorrow for children of families relocating back to Singapore. Returning students will need to sit a set of tests to receive their school options. Poon Chew Yok, caught on video refusing to wear a mask at Marina Bay Sands, was handed 14 more charges today. 10 were for failing to wear a mask at public places and 4 were for breaching her 14-day stay-home notice last year. She now faces 21 charges in total. The case has been adjourned to July 23rd and her bail has been increased from $8,000 to $12,000. You can get more news and videos on straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Thanks so much for watching and see you tomorrow.